For the first time, a current Spurs player and a member of the leadership group, no less, has come out and begged the board to invest more to give Spurs a chance of challenging with the big boys. Meanwhile, reports that we are willing to part ways with one of our midfielders, and Big Ange has the support of the dressing room. I'll be discussing all this and more with my regular Jorri. How are you, Jorri? How are you doing after that appalling Chelsea debacle?
I'm all right, Barnaby. I've been doing a lot of meditation on our club, and I've come to some self-help conclusions. So
Well, get straight in there, Jorri. Where on earth can you start with meditation after? I mean, let me start with this, Jorri. At 2-0, I didn't celebrate because I knew.
Yeah.
So
I wasn't there actually, Barnaby, but I did. I mean, I was fearful for sure, but I thought, maybe if we could get the next goal was what I was thinking the most, But when I thought first when they got the first goal, then I started being fearful, and seeing how the second half started, then I kind of knew what was coming up. Really,
yeah. Jamie Carragher did a big piece on Monday Night Football last night about the space in central midfield when Chelsea quite easily broke the press. What's that all about? Like that for me is a little bit of a throwback. I remember when we went to the Emirates to play Arsenal under Nuno, and we basically almost played like 4 or 5 at the back and then 4 up front, and there was no one in midfield. Why were Chelsea able to break that so simply?
Well, I think it was mainly because we played the single pivot, and Bissouma was basically overloaded, and he was not having a great day, as we all saw. I wanted Gray in there, either with Bissouma or instead of Bissouma, which I thought would still be the riskier play, but I could see Bissouma was heading for a train wreck pretty quickly. But yeah, and like that was what Chelsea did, once they went into the halftime changing room, the managers basically said, listen, we can get the numbers in midfield, and let's just get that, and let's keep possession there and get the turnovers there, and then the rest will come. And I think that is exactly what happened, basically. Yeah.
And how do you feel about Bissouma in general? Yesterday, Alistair Gold came out and said that Tottenham would likely accept any bid, well, not any bid, but an acceptable bid for Bissouma next summer if it arrived, but also said how motivated the player would be to leave the club with only a year left on his contract could prove to be a roadblock. From where I sit, I think what you said about the double pivot is right. If we can play Bissouma alongside somebody else who's going to be helping him out, then I think absolutely he's good enough. But when he's having to fight all those fires himself, he doesn't have the concentration for me to do that.
No, and I mean, the thing about Bissouma, and I think somebody else said it yesterday or something, I think you said it, he does the difficult things so well, and the simple things so badly, really.
What happened for that penalty is the perfect example. He read the game, he intercepted the pass, and all he has to do is give an easy 5-yard pass, but he refuses. He tries to take on an extra man, loses it, and then he's in panic mode. And
I knew when he lost it, I knew he was going to come back for a bad tackle. I just knew it. I didn't even have to see his run. I just knew now he's going to overcompensate for the mistake he made there, because we had a chance to break at that moment there. So but I think, and this is where my old guy Conte, his words on Bissouma is kind of ringing very true. Bissouma's problem is maturity and intelligence, and even though we often joke around with footballers being kind of the bimbos of the male world, there is such a thing as football IQ, and they can be very simple and silly people, but they can still have a good football IQ. But Bissouma is not that. He's not. He is all about his own little game, and he basically needs a grown-up next to him to kind of, both call him into place and to put out the fires that he might start.
Jorri, what did you think of Ange's comment? I heard it yesterday, where he was asked about Bissouma's penalty, I think, and Sarr's penalty, and he tried to kind of spin it in a like protecting his players way, where he was like, well, it showed how desperate they were to make up for mistakes or to win the game. I mean, is that just kind of basic man management protection? And actually in the dressing room, he probably went absolutely ballistic.
I don't know about that, but I do think it's of course some protection of the players, but I also think it's a little bit of Ange there, that was one of the things I was pretty happy with in general. I thought the application was there, but the structure and the tactics and just the leadership wasn't there, but they certainly showed the willingness, in my view. I didn't feel they kind of copped out or switched off as such. They of course gave up a little bit in the end, but nothing compared to the really bad ones that we've seen, so in that regard I can understand Dan's comments, but yes, of course it is also protecting the players, and which he should be doing in that point of time, because like I see it as well, is like the very base you need to get is application.
Yeah.
And if they give you that, then you need to give them some props for that at least, so
yeah. Just before we close the Bissouma thing, just say Jay in the chat said, I watched Bissouma coming into the box and knew the outcome right away, as did you, Jorri. I agree with you on the commitment, especially in the first kind of 20 minutes, 10, 15 minutes, and when we've got the high press on. The problem is for me, once the fatigue doesn't allow the high press to work anymore, then that entire second half for me, and what I'm going off on tangents here, but what I found amazing, like in the kind of post-match from the pundits, Carragher especially was saying, you can't just continue playing in this one way. I didn't think Tottenham did play Ange ball in that second half at all. I thought we basically sat back and didn't have the ball and tried to hit them on the break, but actually were so kind of fatigued that we didn't even really. We made a couple of chances, but I didn't feel like that was an example of Ange ball.
No, I agree, but on the flip side of that is that the players feel the need to do that, and basically, and this is definitely one conclusion that I've come to, is that like you can't play Ange ball in the Premier League without having 20 starting level players, basically at least 20. And we don't have that. We have 11, and then we have kind of,
being 9 short is quite a lot, Jorri.
And like when we're not short, we have 11, and the reason we have 9 short is because we play Ange ball. I mean, not only, but it's the primary reason. It's too taxing, and we've seen much bigger squads than ours play similar football and go into some bad injury crisis and fatigue crisis, and ours is deeper and worse because our squad is thinner. But I would also say that the main kind of problem like there for me was like the original tactical setup. I understand it, but with the ball playing level that Chelsea has, I felt like the double pivot was needed in that game. I do understand why you go gung-ho at home against your biggest rival or one of your biggest rivals. And it was yielding some joy. But, if you're going to do that, in my view, then you need to, after that, and I agree with Carragher there, you need to manage the game. You need to basically close it down until the halftime, maybe come out with another offensive burst in the first minutes in the second half, and then once again manage the game, because the reality is you have to do. The players don't have the resources, physical or mental anymore, to be able to do this for 90 minutes. You know, so. And that's basically what my conclusion has been, is like those first 10 games is the longest stretch of handball we've been able to play, even though it wasn't fully implemented there. It was super fast front foot football, overwhelming in terms of application, and since then we haven't been able to string together a consistent performance in that regard. So
yeah. So after the game, I was getting a lot of kind of messages from Spurs fan friends and WhatsApp groups. You know, obviously, as all of social media was kind of on the question of, you know, can Ange survive this? And the only thing that I said, and I'm actually getting stronger in my will about this, the only reason that there's a little part of me that thinks I'm not sure this can work for Ange is because of the injuries. It is simply that if his style of football and his style of training means that we can never get our best team on the pitch,
and also
that's self-defeating for him. That will cause the end for him.
Exactly, and this is where Ange made a fatal mistake for his own tenure, which was to settle, or like he should have. Maybe he did, but he lost that battle then. But he should have battled for a better, a more here and now transfer window last summer. But like I said, I could also see maybe a scenario where he wasn't able to get those guys because of wages, mostly. And then he, instead of settling for something that wasn't good enough in his view, he then went for what would be his wish in terms of the future, you know. So in that manner, it maybe makes sense, but it also kind of it's still, you know, you still have the same result here and now. And I think it's the exact same conclusion I've come to, Barnaby. The only thing that I'm hands in now, and I'm probably more hands in now than I've been in a long time, because this is where the meditation comes into it. Is I watched back the famous Conte press conference, and I watched the whole thing, and I recommend everybody does it, because it's actually being taken out of context a lot. And basically, all, like, when you really analyze what he's trying to say there, the whole thing is basically, he says, okay, this club is nothing but excuses. It's excuses from the press, it's excuses from the fans, it's excuses from the players, excuses from the board, and so on. And he's spot on with that. And for me, I then, you know, turned it at myself, and I said, okay, let's stop with the excuses. Let's be real here, and let's define what the lowest bar of success can be. And for me, in this moment in Tottenham's history, the lowest bar for success now needs to be to complete a manager's vision, a manager's tenure, in the manner that manager is supposed to do it. And so for me, it's very important that we complete the Ange project now. I mean, I'm kind of convinced now of my original suspicions and my original skepticism in terms of Ange, in terms of it's not a viable philosophy. Even I wouldn't even say strategy. It's not a viable philosophy in terms of the Premier League, just because of the standards of the other teams, and also the flurry of different kind of footballing philosophies you need to go up against. But still, I don't want my suspicions to be the last word. I don't want to be the last word. I want Ange's plan to be the last word in this. And once it's something that we can say, here's the evidence, it's not working. Okay, then we move on. That won't happen till we have 20 plus starting level players in the squad, in my view. So that for me is the important thing. My only caveat, Barnaby, is because I think we have the foundation of a very good squad. We need now the senior leaders in there for sure, but we have the foundation of something that could really give us a lot of joy for many years now. But yeah, so my worry is that that this approach can be destructive. We can lose players to injuries. We can lose players in belief. We can lose players out of the club and so on. So that's my main worry. And at some point, maybe the cost becomes too high for my taste even. But I would say whether you're manager in, manager out, Levy in, let's all agree that let's just set the bar there, because if you're the manager out, well, then you have your evidence at the end of it. If you're Levy out, well, then you also have the evidence at the end of it, because we can't keep going around like this and can't keep being completely split as a fan base, you know. So for me, it's important to stop these excuses, like, you know, entertaining football. That's an excuse for not winning.
Yeah.
Winning at all costs, that's an excuse for being manager out. Levy out is an excuse for just rolling the dice and not knowing what the future is supposed to look like. You know, you all of these things are excuses to not basically focus and let the process that we started evolve and reach its conclusion. You know?
I think they're really great points, Jorri. I think there's also some interesting nuance, and I think we may have discussed this a little bit before, but I do think there's a chance that Ange will also be going into meetings with, you know, Scott Munn and Johan Langer and Daniel Levy and saying, look, people are suggesting that I'm a little more pragmatic sometimes, but I do not have the fullbacks to play more pragmatically. There's no point in me playing Pedro Porro and Destiny Udogie, you know, in a defensive way, because they're not very good at it. And there's no point in me playing a double pivot with Archie Gray, because Archie Gray is not ready to play as a 6 in a Premier League game. And Yves Bissouma isn't a 6. He's more like an 8. So maybe from his point of view, probably similar to Conte, he's like, I need the time because I need the players in the windows. And the reality of it is, as hard as this is for supporters to accept, there was a huge turnover of players. Like he did get rid of all the players that we have been saying for a long time needed to leave the club. And then I think he was also right to say, you can't just do it all at once. We've seen after the Gareth Bale money was spent, you can't buy 8 at once and expect them all to go into the first team and work. It doesn't work like that. So I think they're all the kind of nuances that we have to think about as well. And actually that brings me on really nicely to kind of what came out yesterday, and all the journalists, for the first time in my recollection at Spurs with a manager when they're on a bad run, that the leaks are positive about the manager rather than being negative. So Tom Allnut, the journalist, said the Tottenham dressing room is behind Ange Postecoglou. The Spurs squad, even including those who've been in and out of the team as of late, enjoy Postecoglou's style and training methods. And then obviously there's the Christian Romero quotes, which I think are quite amazing and actually almost slightly, it'll be really fascinating to see or try and hear how Daniel Levy reacts to this, because he said, the truth is, I would say no, interesting, whenever anyone starts with, I would say no comment, but here comes the comment. I would say no comment. But Manchester City competes every year. You see how Liverpool strengthens its squad. Chelsea strengthens their squad. If one doesn't do well, they strengthen again, and now they're seeing results. Those are the things to imitate. You have to realize that something is going wrong. Hopefully they, meaning the Tottenham hierarchy, realize it. The last few years, it's always the same. First the players, then the coaching staff changes, and it's always the same people responsible. Hopefully they, meaning the hierarchy, realize who the true responsible ones are, and we move forward, because it's a beautiful club that with the structure it has could easily be competing for the title every year. Now, one of the main reasons I'm so fascinated by this is because this also comes against the background of us all kind of thinking that he's slightly keen to go to Real Madrid, right? So now he's done a pretty incredible thing where he is saying, I love this club, I want to compete. It's the owner's fault that we're not. But if he, do you know what it reminds me of? The same thing happened back in the day when Sol Campbell got into the last year of his contract at Spurs. And all he was saying was, I'm desperate to stay at the club. I want us to compete. If we get into the Champions League, I'll sign a new contract. But this one comes at a time where, rather than back then when all the fans found that abhorrent to be like holding the club to ransom based on results, he's actually Romero is actually totally at one with the majority of the fan base, and quite incredible.
Yeah, and I think I mean, for me, I'm surprised that he came out so vocal. I think that is actually an indication that he's ready to go. Also, he's not fearing any kind of consequences of his words, really. But Romero is also the type of guy I think that wouldn't really fear it under any circumstances. But big up to him, because he put massive pressure on the board with those comments. And people need to be reasonable. You cannot sit in the stands and say that there's nothing to it. This is an insider. This is a guy that's in there, experiencing it at all. We either need to conclude that he's a complete bald-faced liar, or that there's something to it, and I think we all know this, and even the people that are Levyans, you have to realize that, I mean, like people now, many people now are going Ange out. That's because Ange is not keeping pace with the league, but mainly with the top six is the big problem for everybody, I think. But and I agree, this is the kind of circumstances you have in the Premier League. You need to keep pace, whatever you're trying to do. We all want a cup, maybe first and foremost, the most of us. But we also understand you need to keep pace with the top six in the league. I do not see anything in terms of on-field stuff where this club has kept pace with those clubs that we like to compare ourselves with. On the other hand, I can very happily agree and concede that we probably wouldn't have these ambitions that we have now without Levy growing the club from where it was when they took over. So I cannot, I've had my speculations in terms of what the motives are, whatever, but that's speculations. That's just me, as everybody else, in some kind of maybe conspiracy land thinking, but I can't say that it's one or the other, or then I'm just, giving myself some assumptions. But if you look at the stats and the facts around the matter, is that we've either, or usually both, but we've either underperformed in terms of transfer fees, but we've always been way under in terms of wages.
Yeah, we have always sixth, always fifth or sixth at best. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, we have had periods where we've actually, and this is also what I think happened in the summer, was the wages stopped some of these transfers, like SA and stuff like that.
But arguably they shouldn't have, because we just got rid of Kane, 200 grand a week at least, not including bonuses. Lloris, 200 grand a week, not including bonuses. Dyer must have been on over 100. And then, even the people like Højbjerg will have been on 80, 90.
To work with, yeah.
The wage bill is now considerably less than it was previously.
So there's both money in Levy's pocket to do it, and there's also the room in terms of FFP and all of that. But also, I mean, this is now my just opinion of Levy. Levy, if you give him an inch, he'll take a meter, and that's kind of what I also think a little bit happened there. But also Levy has probably gotten a big bonus or a big jackpot with this kind of weights level, and he doesn't want to disrupt that with an essay or Grealish or whatever it could have been, Neto, and so there's this speculation. So before everybody freaks out in the comments and stuff like that, this is just my speculation.
Well, we're all speculating because we don't know the inside of the boardroom. But what I do know from the years of it is that he wants to run it, or he has to run it sustainably. He has to run it sustainably because, and everyone likes to throw around the quotes from, I think it was the AEK Athens chairman when ENIC had taken AEK Athens over. And it was just when Spurs ENIC took Spurs over, and he was like, this won't be good for their fans because they don't invest in the club. They run it as a long-term strategy to try and make money from the club. Now, I think that's true. They run it sustainably, but that I think kind of Spurs under Levy is kind of in the middle, right? They're definitely not Manchester City where they just throw all of the state's money at the club, right? But they're also not Mike Ashley's Newcastle or the Glazers where they
United.
take exactly, or the Glazers at United where they take loads of money out of the club. It's in the middle where they run it sustainably. So the money that is made by the club goes back into the club, and then when they sell it, if they can sell it at the £3 billion that they're looking to sell it for, then that's where they will make their money. So within the confines of that, I don't really have a problem with it because I've always known that we're going to be run safely, right? We're not going to get points deductions, and we're not going to get relegated. But of course, it is frustrating that they're not willing to go above and beyond. And then just sorry to go on a bit, but just on top of that, I think where the problems rise, and I will have said this before, transfer wise, we are swimming in the same waters as the other clubs who will pay more for wages. So the players that we're going for, and this is where I think the newer strategy of getting young, talented players, and I actually want to say I thought Bergvall had his best game when he came on the other day, which I think is really good news going forward. But where the strategy I think is best, that we're kind of almost like similarly to Borussia Dortmund in our strategy, is you can get these young, talented players at the wages we want, where other than Chelsea, other clubs aren't really going to take the risks on these players. So I think that as well as the disappointment that we're not able to spend money like Romero saying, like Man City do or like Chelsea do, the closest I think is Liverpool. Don't forget, Liverpool's fans kind of don't like FSG even though they've won a Champions League and a league. But what Liverpool did amazingly was sell Philippe Coutinho for 130 million and invest it in Van Dijk and Alisson. And what Spurs aren't able to do now, I don't think, and never succeeded in under Levy, unfortunately, was because we have to run it sustainably as FSG do. We never sold a player for the huge amount of money. And then, because even Harry Kane, when we sold him for 100 million, 2 times 50 million now isn't the same as 2 times 75 was back when Liverpool did. So there's a lot of nuance to it, and it's difficult, but it is frustrating.
Yeah, sure, but the problem also is that like you said, like the sustainability and so on, But the thing is, Barnaby, it isn't down to one chairman or one club to say what the conditions are for competing. They are just what they are. The league sets those conditions, and that is exactly at this point in time. It used to be more transfers. Levy has changed with Ange in terms of that, but he's also getting the volume, and he's getting assets that could turn out to be a big win investment wise. But now it's the wages that is definitely stopping us from getting the seniority in which we need here and now. But I would say also, for the meditation also for me is just to get away from all of this Levy board stuff, because let's just lower the bar to what is the lowest definition of success. And for me, it's completing whatever we set out to do. So we get a Conte in, let's get a few expensive players in and play Conte ball. We get Ange in, let's get a lot of cheap players in and play Ange ball. But Levy is likely to get a few cheap players in and maybe one expensive. So that's kind of how it goes. So the math never quite works in that regard. But for me, it's also a question of when if let's just to answer the whole Levy thing, and I'll be done with it then. If you're not happy as a fan, it's the players. They are not turning up. They're not showing applications. They don't have the borderline developmentally challenged and so on and so on. Okay. Other fans, it's the manager. His tactics are completely out of whack. It's never going to work, and so on. But it's not the board. It's not Levy. It's not how we run the club. But once you have those issues with players and managers for 20 years, then it has to be how we're running the club. How we're recruiting managers, how we're recruiting players, how we're developing players, how we're supporting a manager's vision. And so, because the range of managers is unbelievable, and there's some amazing managers all in their own kind of special version, Redknapp, we often go back to Poch, there's many stepping stones on the way which did miracles in their kind of a situation. So, and of course it would be childish to say that the running of the club would never be a factor in this. The question becomes: is it only the running of the club? Is this only Levy, and so on? And that's maybe a bigger discussion. But I think what Romero is trying to get at is that, in his view, we're there. We have a squad. We have a manager. Now you guys need to step into the game as well.
Yeah. And my fear is it's more likely that Romero will now be sold quickly by Levy for sticking his head above the parapet.
Levy. This is very good news for Real Madrid and others out there. I think,
they'll have to pay, though. They will have to pay, and then maybe we can
they will pay. Yeah, they will pay. But I mean, this is also my other fear, and this is where I'm very frustrated with how we run the club, is that once we have the foundation of something like now, I feel like the squad, whether I agree with Ange's tactics or not, doesn't matter. I think this squad, in terms of Tottenham football, attacking football, for me, transitional football as well, is a very, very good foundation. It doesn't need much. It needs a little bit of seniority and quality in there, and we're off to the races, in my view. But once you have that, if now this same kind of approach from the board is happening, means that we're going to start leaking out our best players. The foundational pieces of that squad are gonna go. They're gonna give up. They're gonna lose their patience, lose their belief. And I mean, the best example was Harry Kane. He did everything in his power to try and stay with us and be positive and see a way that it might change. Never did. And so I don't really blame him. But once again, for me, let's get off this Levy in, Levy out, Ange in, Ange out. Let's can we agree that what we decided on to start that we finish that project, because we haven't
Yeah.
done that since Potts, you know.
Yeah, Jorri, I'm with you on that, but I need to raise one caveat, and we'll wrap this up soon.
Yeah.
If we lose against Rangers and Southampton, I think Levy will have to. I think Levy will sack him.
That's another conversation. I think Ange is on very thin ice now, and I think Levy will be pretty quick. This is the season that Levy prefers to fire his managers, because he has a chance of getting some miracle worker in and getting something in terms of European games. And I do think that I don't think Ange survives Rangers and Southampton defeats.
Yeah, and my fear is that we might well lose those games.
And my fear, absolutely, as well, because and that's also the other thing. And I would say to people in general, if I hope the board just stick to their guns and back him and don't do anything premature. But we're going in. There's a lot more of this coming up.
Yeah.
Because the situation is not getting better; it's getting worse. You know, they're going to be even more tired. My prediction, my unfortunate prediction, is that Solanke is next up. You know, I'm
to get injured.
Yeah, injured. Yeah. And you know why? Look at what the man is doing, game after game after
What
game.
A player. What a player, by the way. What
a player! Exactly. I actually think maybe he might be the best on the ball player that we have in the club right now. Deki, a close second, but Deki is in a different way. But just in terms of pure skill, Solanke is definitely, if not the best, then the second best.
Here's what I hope, Jorri, just to try and come to a conclusion. I really hope that Ange, and maybe against Southampton, actually trusts like Bergvall and Gray, and it's just like, I'm going to give you a start, because if we could get a win with some of these young players suddenly getting a chance, and I'm not saying, I don't see them in training every day, so I'm not saying that, you know, they're ripping it up and just making mistakes, but what I'm saying is they're not fatigued, right? And so if we could get a win in the Premier League with these players maybe getting starts, and then, do you know that feeling that you sometimes get where a player kind of comes in and suddenly you see them grow. You actually see them grow kind of game by game, and suddenly they grow within their confidence within the squad, and then the other players in the squad and the team put trust in them and stuff. We need that from some of these players who haven't been playing a lot, because the players who have been playing a lot, when they come up against teams either playing a low block or against Chelsea where they were just playing through them easily, you can see, and it comes back to this thing that I say in every watch long. I'm like, whenever Tottenham come up against adversity, you watch them crumble. You watch the weakness. And we need to find a position of strength where suddenly we turn that around and actually like, okay, these young players who have legs are kind of helping us drive through this problem. And it happened in Pochettino's season where he nearly lost his job. And it was Kane who got that goal against Aston Villa, and Ryan Mason was driving us forward, and etc. And we need that to happen again. Otherwise, I fear for Postecoglou.
Yeah, and I think you said two words there which I want to grab hold to, which is adversity and legs, because I feel like the most defeating kind of adversity our squad is coming up against now is meeting a team that has fresh legs. I think that's probably the most daunting that they feel, you know, and that's, for example, Chelsea were well rested, apart from having basically a 30-man starting lineup. You know, they had also rested key players.
Yeah, because they're playing Dross FC in the Conference League, aren't they?
Yeah. But I mean, you know, yes, Barnaby, but we weren't playing European games last season.
No, I agree. We were terrible last season when we.
But for sure. But I think so. In terms of playing these other players, I definitely think so, and that's also, I do think that Ange is not getting it right in that term. You need to swallow your pride here and get Spence on board. You need even to have a talk with Regulon about, you know, giving himself a great advertising for a new club and so on. You need to just find every resource that you can in that changing room and get them to play their part in getting over this period.
Completely agree. Okay, just going to go through some of the people, some of the comments in the chat. Guys, thank you so much for watching this live stream on Big Up. Obviously, if you're on YouTube, please do give this video a like and subscribe to my channel for daily Spurs content, but also doing these live streams on Big Up. The link to join my community on Big Up will be in the description box below. But Tom Bowdler says, 2 times 50 million is not the same as 1 times 100 million, to which I replied, I mean, in terms of inflation, in terms of the times when that money was spent, in terms of Liverpool versus Spurs. But Tom came back and said, I'd rather have 1 Declan Rice than 2 Bissoumas. Well, look, I agree. However, just as a caveat, I would say that Arsenal, unfortunately, and even though we kind of came ahead of them for kind of nigh on 10 years, in terms of their financial muscle, they are way ahead of us. And that's why they're able to spend 100 million a time in terms of, their ground was finished in 2006 and they sold all of the land around it and have, and made lots and lots of money. And I think we're still fighting for that. I know we're making a lot of revenue. I do know that, but I still think
we're also the eighth richest club. That's not only revenue, that's taking everything into account, Barnaby. So.
I know, but also you can't, I know that the stadium debt, which is over £1 billion, is over 50 years or whatever, but you can't tell me that doesn't have an effect. It has to have at least some effect on us. Otherwise,
of course we need to pay it down. But once you see the riches, we have the stadium, we have other assets, and they can be leveraged for basically free money when you're at a AAA rating like we are. But this is what I said, and this is why this is without a doubt, in my view, the number one priority is that we keep our credit rating at AAA. So that's why a lot of strange things get done in the club, I think, because that right. And to keep that, you need to have a steady growth of revenue and a steady lowering of cost and exactly of
that makes
debt
sense.
And so on.
Yeah. So he he can't go out and splurge 500 million pounds because we might lose our rating.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. Jay says it's about doing the smart recruitment and getting the mix right. Of course, we have need higher level players too. He also says my thought is that we are always 20 to 30% below what we need to be in terms of numbers and quality. I don't disagree with that, to be honest.
No.
And then he says if we just push that boat out once in a while, but Jorri's just said that's so. Yeah, there's some kind of accounting and financial reason why Levy wants to always keep it on that steady ship. And Tom then says Levy said moving to the new stadium would allow us to compete. It hasn't, at least not yet. So it's all kind of the same stuff. Look, it is difficult, and thank you guys for writing in the comments and for these future watch along live chats, guys. Make sure you get into that Big Up community, and then you can get involved too. Jorri, just to finish this off, then we've talked about our fears for Rangers and Southampton. Let's try and put a positive spin on it. Say we're going to win those games, and that'll take us closer towards January. Is it realistic that we can bring in the kind of players we need to then turn this round in the second half of this season and push towards, I was going to say push towards a trophy. My big fear in terms of trophy is whenever, like I said, if we can't handle adversity in these games, how are we going to handle adversity in a semi-final at Wembley or a final in the Europa League? It's just hard to imagine.
Yeah, and if we can't find the numbers to rest and rotate and so on, how are we going to do it for all these games coming up? I think Barnaby, and I think like realistically, these managers, including Mans, often do really spectacular, kind of almost magical things. But like the way my math works, I would say we need 4 or 5 outfield players in January in order to sustain this kind of football and have success with it this season, being one of the cups that we're in. I don't think we're going to get that, and I would be
because the January tax is so high. There's no way that he's going to pay extra on that amount of players.
No, and first of all, he won't do that. But I would be fine with finding it in different leagues, and even like small gems. Van de Ven is our best example of that, and all of that, but just players that can come in and impact the starting lineups right away. I think we're short 4 or 5 at this moment, so yeah.
How good did it look for 10 minutes with Mickey van der Ven and Romero on the pitch, though?
Yeah, but that was actually, and that's one of my, this is my fear with Ange. I thought that was a mistake.
So did I. I thought that came from him.
As soon as I saw the lineup, I said, oh, and I was like, okay, are they okay, or is Ange desperate?
I agree. I thought he picked them then because he felt the pressure.
Yeah. And which concerns me, because it means that Ange even is kind of diverging from his own philosophy a little bit, so or from his own principles, maybe rather say that. Yeah. So
that is a worry. Listen, Jorri, thanks. An elongated but brilliant chat. Really appreciate it, guys. Like I said, please do give this video a like on YouTube and subscribe to my channel over there as well. But looking big up for the description box, in the description box, how to join my Spurred On community there, so you can get involved in these live chats and watch-alongs as and when I do them. I know it's difficult, guys. We got Rangers coming up on Thursday evening. God, I fear that so much, because that is the biggest game in Rangers' recent history. The Battle of Britain, they'll be all calling it. They'll want it so bad.
They'll be dying to put one over
Ange. Yeah, exactly. So it's going to be a difficult one. But if we can somehow, against adversity, maybe even for the first time this season, turn them over, then maybe we can look more positively towards Southampton. Anyway, come on, you Spurs.